several years now and actively involved on the board for the last 3. So happy to be here and answer any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, Nina. Erica?
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Casillas. I work at AbbVie. I just transferred over to the corporate finance side. I did audit before. And I've been part of ALPFA since an undergrad at U of I. I don't know if we have any U of I participants on it, but I'm wearing your guys' hoodie today. On the board, this is my 3rd year, and I'm the director of membership.
Thanks, Erica. Natalia?
Hi, everybody. I'm Natalia Malabar. I was part of ALPFA as a student leader in Baruch College in New York. I moved here 3 years ago to start a job at PGIM Real Estate, which is the investment arm of Prudential. And I'm currently the director of mentorship.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalia. And last but not least, Sarah?
Good. I was going to say good morning, good evening. My name is Sarah Montante. I'm a senior lead auditor with Allstate Insurance. I've been there for 3 years, and I've actually been a part of with ALPFA since I was an undergrad as well. I was president, vice president, and excited to be part of the professional board this year for the first time.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so everyone, just to set the stage here again, just to outline how the night is gonna go, we do have a list of questions that we are going to ask the panelists. A few questions are gonna be designed for everybody on the panel to answer, and I'll let you know which ones those are gonna be. And again, we'll just stick to the same order for those questions that are for the entire panel. And then other questions, whoever wants to raise their hand and speak up. And students, if you do have any questions that you want to follow up on any of the responses from the panelists, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll unmute so you could ask your question. So without further ado, the first question, and this is going to be for the entire panel, is going to be, we'll start off with Anthony. And the question is, how did you choose your career path and what attracted you to your career, and does that still apply? So Anthony, I'll hand the ball over to you to get started.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was very lucky to find what I love to do in high school. I went through a couple of things, freshman, sophomore, junior year that I thought I loved to do. I was physical therapy, I loved writing, all these random things, from left to right of the spectrum. And then, what really drove me to what I do now is this kind of reignited passion for design and for creativity. So growing up, my dad always sketched, my mom always sang and danced in the house. So there was always this, natural gravitation to things that were creative, things that made you express yourself. And also growing up, I was born in '92. And from that point to, I was in high school, technology was booming, right? We went from having Nokias to having iPhones and laptops and all these things. Back when I had a cassette player and then an MP3 player that wasn't an iPad or an iPod. There was this love for technology, and in high school, thankfully, I found a way to bond those two together, and I started doing things online. I started making flyers for my high school dances that one of Dave and I's close friend really put on, and I would start honing my skills there. So this love for creativity, this passion for being able to solve problems through design and through the visual field really pushed me to find a career in it. And thankfully I'm not as successful as I would want to be yet. I think we can all say that as professionals, but I think it's just this thing that drives me every single day. So it still applies. This love for my creativity and the passion and things that I can do, it still applies every single day, thankfully.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. And I've personally seen Anthony's work, and that love that he has for his career definitely shines through his work. So thank you for that response, Anthony. And Ben, you're next up here.
Yes, I would say I've always wanted to be in finance. Originally, I wanted to be an investment advisor, which I did for several years. And then my career kind of changed a little bit, but always within finance. It's always been a passion of mine, which is where I'm at now as a commercial banker. But I don't think that this is the end road for me. I think, as the world changes, my mindset changes. And I think, you know, there are other things out there that I would like to do that at some point I probably will do. So I think, you know, right now this is where my passion has led, but I can't say the same that, you know, for tomorrow.
That makes sense, man. And I think one thing that really resonates with that is that, you know, one thing to remember with careers, and I think you just pointed out, Ben, that it's not always the end all be all, and that you're still able to explore other career paths to find something that you're really going to be passionate about. So I thank you, Ben. Carlos?
Yeah, so I'm in finance as well. I am a small sliver of this like private equity investment banking bucket on the private equity side, specifically on real estate. What drove me here, I wish I could say was like some altruistic, you know, passion, purpose, but in retrospect, probably for all the wrong reasons, right? Like I didn't grow up very well off, so I think as a child I kind of always chased that like financial stability and like status and such, and that's what I started chasing since high school. And transitioned to college, I kind of took that like, I want to go into business mentality and shifted it to the investing side and kind of figured out exactly what sliver of the business world. But now I'm starting to figure out like the deeper level of what asset class within that as well. So I would say what got me here wasn't probably the best thing, but I do think that ultimately it was the right place for me, at least from my personality's sake, as far as like being motivated by like learning, achievement, and competition. And I think kind of to Ben's point, like I do see myself in this space for the rest of my life, even to a point of where I think one of my friends one time asked me, like, what would you do if you won $20 million? And my first answer was, I would start a family office and I would invest that. And so this I know is the road for me and the ultimate path.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. It's great that you found something that you're really passionate about, it sounds like. So thank you. Daniela?
Yeah, so I'd say, to be completely honest, I'm getting flashbacks of being a senior in high school and just realizing I loved math and I loved working with numbers, right? And so kind of echoing off what some of the other panelists had said, I was first generation, had no idea what a career even really entailed or what I had to do to have a career. I just knew like, I got to go to college. I need to like do better. And I went to an open house at one of the universities that I'd been accepted to. And I remember meeting this woman who was also a Latina. She was like, I think like the director of the Latino Resource Center at the time. And she stopped my parents and she was talking to me and she's like, well, like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you like? I'm like, well, I'm not actually sure yet. I think I want to do something in business because like, I like working with numbers. I'm really good at math and, you know, I'm very argumentative, but I don't think I want to go to law school. So I think I'm going to do something in business, right? And so she's like, oh yeah, like we have a great college of business. Like you should look into it. And she connected me with the person that was there from the College of Business. And then that was like it for me. I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do like something in the College of Business. But then it was like, do I want to do finance? Do I want to do accounting? Do I want to do marketing? You know? And so just like by default of like, you know, so I'll take a step back. I got involved early on. I became actively involved with ALPFA my freshman year at NIU. And just by talking to people who were already like in their junior and senior year of their college experience, I was like, I think I want to do accounting. And so that's just kind of like, I don't know, I think just by talking and networking, I decided accounting was like the best fit for me. And then it became even more clear once I started taking my accounting classes. And, you know, fast forward, you know, you've got tax, audit, forensic accounting, et cetera. I think for me, just with experience and having like a good network, it became clear to me that tax was something that I wanted to do. It had several opportunities, right? You could go public, private, you can work in different areas of tax, international tax, domestic, et cetera. And then to Carlos' point, obviously I was interested in having a better life for myself. So pay was good, something I thought I'd be interested in. And so, yeah, I mean, real estate wasn't something I actually didn't even know existed or that a field I could work in until I started my career at Deloitte. But I would say for the most part, I am where I am because of my experiences in the networks the networking opportunities I've been introduced throughout the year. So
awesome. And I think that definitely highlights how important it is to network. I know that, I mean, and the students that are on the webinar today, I'm sure that they could definitely benefit from reaching out to those peers that are in areas that are going to be interesting to them, right? So thank you, Daniela. Erica?
So for me, I actually chose going to U of I because they had one of the best actuarial science programs. So I thought I also loved math like Daniela. I went to math camp and they really pushed actuarial science. And I also wanted job security because I also am a first generation student and, you know, really wanted to go to college to get a job. But then I quickly discovered my first semester of college that I didn't like that type of math. And so I went through different emotions of even thinking about dropping out because I didn't think that was for me. I talked to people in actuarial science, joined the club, and it wasn't really fit for me. So then I looked to see what other major I could go into that was similar, that I wouldn't lose like a semester. And thankfully, like the first year of actuarial science major and a business major were similar. So I had all the prereqs to be able to transfer into the College of Business. And at U of I, you only have like one very specific semester you can do it. And so that's how I got in. Like, thankfully I got in. And between accounting and finance, I don't actually remember picking accounting versus finance in my application, but somehow I did. And so I did accounting. So it's just kind of like the look of it. I don't remember choosing it, but I actually am really thankful that I started in accounting. Then I did public accounting. I did external audit, which gave me a great skill set that I think I've been able to transfer over to now I'm in corporate finance. And so I think that I started at one place and now I'm completely different where I thought I would be. And I think throughout my experience as a student and as a professional, I've taken on those skills to be able to develop them to something else.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Natalia?
Yeah, so my story is extremely similar to Carlos's. I knew from high school that finance was typically a major in which I can get a role that had a really high earning potential. And as an immigrant, as a first generation college student, that was like my absolute biggest priority. And it really shouldn't have been, but it was. In my freshman year, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I knew it was finance, but in my head, it was just like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna be a financial analyst. And it's like, I don't know what that means, you know, like I was just saying words. And so thankfully there was an organization that came at the end of my freshman year and they had a presentation called Demystifying Finance. And this presenter went through over like 20 different careers that you can have. And that was like my super eye-opening for me that you can have this many careers with one major. And so I focused on like 5. I just focused all my efforts to recruiting for any of those different paths. And a little bit like more to the point, I had a lot of internships. I actually really didn't like any of them. Thankfully, the last one was kind of better. It was doing investment management for alternative investments and working in fund development. And that had to do with real estate. And that's where I really figured out that I really liked it. It made sense for me. It clicked. It wasn't the kind of people that I was meeting with the real estate group weren't at all standoffish. They were just very down to earth. And it just made me feel really passionate whenever I looked at a deal that had to do with real estate. I was interested by it because it's interesting how a built environment can have an impact on the community. And more to the point, it just makes more sense to me than a stock valuation model, where you can look at a rent roll, you can look at the actual building where you're going and see that it makes sense. You can go analyze the rent roll and see floors 8, 9, and 10 have had low occupancy. Why? You go to those floors and you start to realize why. Maybe the carpet in the hallway hasn't been changed in a really long time, or maybe the height of that floor is lower than in the other floors. And so there was something about real estate that just really caught my attention, and it was surprising to me because I didn't expect to really be passionate about something about my career, and I am, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to have an internship that made me figure that out.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalia. And last but not least, Sarah.
Yeah, so my interest started when I was little. I'm also first generation go to college. I remember when I was little walking downtown, I was like, I want to work in those, tall buildings, dress up. So in high school, I actually joined a business club. I took accounting classes, which led me to my business career when I first joined community college. Then once I transferred to NIU, I wasn't sure, like Danielle I mentioned earlier, there's, you could do marketing, finance, accounting. So my dad actually has a friend that's an accountant from the company where he works. And he's like, there's job security and accounting, she'll always have a job. So he mentioned it to me. So that kind of like led me that direction. That's when I took like accounting courses in high school, community college, and I decided to major that in NIU. And then I decided to do audit just because I did not like tax. It wasn't my passion. I preferred audit. So when I had to make that choice, I did audit. And after graduating, I started with the Big Four, did external auditing for 2 years. I definitely, it was a great experience, great exposure. I developed a lot of great skills. I could transition to my current role, which is now internal audit. It's this complete opposite. And I love it. I feel like I'm adding value to my company. It's different every day. There's just, it's not the same thing every day. So it's fun. And it helps me grow, think outside the box, and obviously strengthen those critical thinking skills as an internal auditor.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And I think just to summarize the responses from all the panelists that we received, I think important to point out that, students, as you think about your careers, remember that it's okay to explore different paths to find out what you're truly passionate about, right? Daniela shared about the importance of networking. Natalia talked about the internships, right? A few of the panelists talked about how they didn't really know what they wanted to do at the beginning, but they figured it out as they moved along. And Ben shared that even later on in his career, and now he's still looking at exploring different things. So remember to, as you continue to take on these roles or move into full-time positions, that it's never going to be that end all be all to really find your passion. So panelists, thank you for sharing those responses. So the next question here that I think that's going to hit close to home for all of us, and whoever wants to answer this, panelist, feel free to raise your hand. But the question is, how did you navigate corporate America coming in as a first generation professional? I know that some of us, or most of us actually, are first generation. So whoever wants to take that question on, just feel free to raise your hand or just speak up. Go ahead, Carlos.
I mean,
oh.
There was a raising the hand request, America. I'm kidding. No, I wanted to say that I don't think that this question should be phrased in past tense. Like, we're all still in corporate America. We're all still like doing this in active and present tense. But that was my comment, and so we can go to Erica, and then you can go back to me.
Sorry, I missed I didn't see that you raised your hand. Sorry. So no, I was just going to say that I think similar to that, I still feel like I'm still navigating it. Like, we don't have, I don't have anyone in my family that works in corporate America that can tell me how things are, how things should be. I think for me, what really helped were my internships that I had over the summer. I started with Ernst & Young, and I did a leadership workshop with them, and then I did 3 summer internships. And I think those really helped me get my foot into what corporate America is and how to dress, how to talk. And, I'm not going to lie, I'm sure I embarrassed myself a couple of times because no one told me otherwise, but it was really putting myself out there, networking, asking people like, oh, do you think this is normal? Should I do this? Should I do that? But I think I'm still navigating. I still think I'm still learning. I'm only 5 years into my career, and it's something that it's still so new to me. So I wouldn't feel like people shouldn't feel uncomfortable if they don't know how to navigate corporate America.
Oh, that's perfect, Erica. Thank you. And good call out, Carlos, because I think we're definitely still all there today. So thank you, Carlos and Erica. So this is, I guess, for 2 to 3 people, whoever wants to answer on the from panelists, and just also just raise your hand, and the first couple of people will go ahead and answer. So what are some of the biggest challenges in your role today?
So I'm in a solely sales role. So I mean, mine's easy. The biggest challenge is getting through the door, right? And it's hard to do that when you can't even walk to somebody's door anymore. You have to do that all virtually. So the challenge that we've faced is having to learn how to make a presentation completely virtually in a sales process that usually required handshaking and paper, paper bound proposals and things like that. And we had to do it all just virtually now. So it's been quite a change in doing that.
So thank you, Ben.
I can take another shot at this one from a tax perspective, and I'll say I think this is very industry specific. I think given COVID and just the working from home environment, there was quite a bit of time in 2020 where, everything was just sort of stagnant from a real estate perspective, right? No one was buying, no one was selling. People were too scared to get rid of things or buy new things or just even kind of, take any kind of risk. So it was relatively slow. Now that, things are kind of slowly getting back to somewhat of a normal phase, as you will hear from all the emails I'm still getting, it's a very fast-paced environment. There's deals happening, and you've got to look at, this is going to be a little bit over some people's heads, but not only does my day entail looking what certain acquisitions mean at the property level, right? What kind of taxes are we going to be paying if we go buy something in, Berkeley, California? It's also looking, because most of our money is private equity and we have institutional investors, it's also taking into consideration, all right, what does this, ultimate acquisition mean? What does this acquisition ultimately mean for our investors up at the top? Do we need to be cognizant of anything that might trigger like a negative tax impact for them, right? So my day could just be like, oh, these are my to-do things, and then suddenly something will pop up, someone from transactions will reach out, and it becomes like a scram, right? So all that to say, there's a big part of my day that relies on a big component of flexibility. Like, you need to be flexible with your day, and you really got to be able to identify what's priority, like what did I want to get through today? What was on my to-do list? But realistically, seeing that my day, it's now, 4 o'clock and I didn't get to any of that. What do I really need to get through, just to make sure I survive the day? So there's a big sense of being flexible, being able to communicate concisely. You only have, someone's time for X amount of minutes. And then you've also got to be able to look at the large, big picture, right? Not trying to get lost so much in the weeds. And then just maybe trying to identify, what do I really need to solve for the moment, right? You've got deals that are very much time consuming and they're trying to close tomorrow. So you really got to identify, what are the issues for right now? What can wait until after we close on this deal and we can figure it out later, but what's important for the now? So I would say for students, if there's anything you would take away, and even if you can't relate to what I'm saying, learn to be flexible and identify what are competing priorities and what absolutely needs to get done. And then with that being said, how do I deliver my communication so that it's concise and I can maximize my day? Because I struggle with this. Like, there's days that I'm like, I want to get through everything. And it's like 11 p.m. and I'm like, but I'm not going to get through everything. So just call it a day, So learn how to sort of keep that balance to help yourself.
So, thanks, Daniela. And just take a pause here. There's a question that came in. So, and the question is, what is your advice for someone who is going into the tax industry right after college?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say obviously network because, you know, like I said, I thought declaring myself like a tax accountant was the end all be all. And then once I launched my career, I started at a public accounting firm. I started at Deloitte. I realized like, well, tax is only a small subset of what I can really do. So network, you know, if something doesn't feel right, if you're just like maybe not connected to your job, I'm not saying that I feel like extremely passionate about taxes and like, no, but like Natalia said, I just found real estate to be more relatable. So I rather do tax work than, you know, derivatives or like hedge fund. I just rather do real estate again. So network, try and see if there's like other opportunities that you can explore, especially if some of you are looking to start at a big four firm. Talk to your other people that like other, you know, starting class members. Like if you make friends, talk to the people that are in private wealth management. If you happen to be like in corporate tax, talk to them, you know, really leverage your coach or your buddies or anyone who's like assigned to you during your first year, and just let them know that you're really just trying to meet more people. Don't be afraid to ask questions, especially in your first year. This is like your time to ask any question because the expectations of what you know are so low that any question is a valid question. And the more questions you ask, the more interested you appear to be in your job. And people are never going to look down at that. They'll look down on the fact that you didn't ask questions. But if you ask questions, they'll notice that. And you're more likely to be pulled on to the type of work that you like or people that you like working for, because that's also half the battle, right? Like if you know you've got long hours, you want to make sure you're working with the right kind of people, the people that are looking out for you and the people that will teach you. Because I guess that's another thing too, right? Like what you learn in theory is not always what you need to learn in practice. And sometimes the people you meet in practice are really your biggest advocates. So you want to make sure you're like looking out for yourself on different angles. So network, ask questions, and don't be afraid to get out and put yourself out there. Like just really talk to people. Just tell people like you're just trying to like get to know them and who you are. And trust me, people will not look down at that, especially not in your first year. I think it speaks a lot about you. So I think that's the bulk of my advice, you know, just push yourself into the unknown.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. And I think you point out something very important that actually this is guidance or advice that I think we've all received as well, which I think to summarize is to be curious, right? And I think that the curiosity or being curious really is relevant to every single role, including sales, finance, tax, wherever you are. Definitely asking questions is going to be extremely important. So thank you for sharing that, Daniela. So this next question, and again, for whoever wants to take this question on, just when you do answer it though, please just state your role and company again, just so we understand the context. So or could you describe a typical workday in your industry or position?
So I can go. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. But this is Sarah Montante. I'm a senior lead internal auditor. So one of the things I love about my career, my job every day is like every day is not the same. It's something different. Like Daniela mentioned earlier, I could have a to-do list and I end up adding 20 other different things, or I have to prioritize, change everything. But to give some overview of what I do on everyday basis, kind of. So I lead 2 to 3 projects a year. And we have like 3 main phases for each audit. So we have like a planning phase, a fieldwork phase, and a reporting phase. And each project is in different levels. So we meet with our contacts, with our clients, which is essentially all state departments. If I have a social media audit, I'm meeting with the marketing team. If I have like a mobile app audit, I'm meeting with the technology team. So it's just a lot of client-facing meetings, a lot of planning. There's a lot of testing, and just the biggest thing is just the communication, organization, and prioritization. But every day is very different. There's random things that come up. There's conflicts that occur with clients. So that's one thing about I love is just every day is different. But the end goal is pretty similar. But I definitely get that exposure and enhance and develop some of my skills, which is communications, critical thinking, and data analytics, fraud analytics. So it's different every day.
So, any other? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I can go next. So I'm Natalia. I work in investment management, in real estate financing. And so for us, there's no typical workday. And I would phrase this question more as in, we work on a deal to deal basis. And so you can have 5 to 6 different transactions at the same time. And it's just a matter of like what stage they're all in. You can have a deal that just came in from a broker and you're starting to underwriting, and that process takes a long time to put everything through the model. Or you could be drafting up credit memos, investment memos that will also take up a lot of time because you have to do a lot of research, be prepared to go to your credit officer, your investment officer to get this basically to committee so that it can get approved. Or you can be in you could have won the deal on a bidding basis, and then you're doing due diligence, and it's a lot of collecting rent rolls, certifying, a lot of legal work and going through estoppels and different things. But I think that's what also attracts me to this role, is that there's just so many different things that I could be doing at the same time. And I like not feeling bored at my job. I like that there's always a challenge. I like that I'm still getting, I'm still learning as I go, even though I've been in this role for 3 years. And the different legal complexities that you can speak to a lawyer at any time and figure out like why this is an issue, or you can speak to accountants and like figure out like why this is getting taxed differently than maybe another deal that we've done in the same municipality. And so like from a day-to-day basis, everything changes, and a week-to-week basis, everything changes. And that's also the fun part about working on transactions, that every deal is different. So it's never going to be the same.
Thank you, Natalia. And so this next question is going to be for everybody. And again, we'll just go in alphabetical order. And the question is, how did you prepare for your full-time role? Are there any certifications that you need that would be beneficial to look into? So Anthony, we'll get started with you, and then we'll go in alphabetical order.
The more and more I listen, I feel like the way I'm coming at things is very, very similar, even though it feels like the industries are so different, right? I look at things from literally a visual perspective, whereas there's so much, more research and foundation that goes into everything that you all do. But specifically for me, I think everyone can attribute to this, is that it's just a lot of practice. It's a lot of trial and error and learning what works. And in my case, there's no right way to do it. I get, when I'm going through school, they teach you all these things, and I know, remembering as a college student, how I felt like there was always a right way and a wrong way, and you're getting kind of graded, and you're finding these ways that are like maybe not yours, but they work. And it's like you study all night to get an A, or you just like cram right before and you do well. But what I do, and what I did to get into my full-time role in my internship, was I just networked. I worked my butt off. I built a portfolio that stood out above other people's, and I made sure that I let my work do the talking for me. I didn't come in with any type of ego. I checked that at the door, and I made sure that I just worked hard no matter what. And I took all the opportunities that I got, even if they weren't glamorous. As a designer, you're with my friends and family daily, sometimes, and so-and-so's having a party, so I'm starting up my own company, and everything ranges. But sometimes it works to try those small opportunities that don't pay you well, or that don't get the exposure on my end, and then you start learning from it, and that builds your tool case and your skill set for everything that you need to do in the future. So one thing that I would say, if any type of advice for going into these internships and these full-time roles for someone that might be in my industry or not, is just make sure that when people are giving you opportunities, you take them if you really can. Like you don't put your ego into play and only do things because they make you look good or because they're the role that you want to have at that point. You know, all of us here are still growing. We still have, you know, things that we want to do one day. And like Dave and a couple people I think Ben mentioned is that we're not in our final form. We're not in our final job. So just stay motivated. And, you know, that starts from internship till now. Sorry, not what about?
Oh, thanks, Anthony. Ben?
The only thing I would add to that is most jobs, and I'm going to caveat this with the exception of our accounting folks here. Most jobs don't require, you know, letters after your name to get into the field. A lot of times that stuff comes within the field. So if you want to be a project manager, you can become project manager and then get the PMP designation later. There are certain jobs, like when I was a financial advisor, you had to have a Series 63 and 7 license, but they taught you how to do that, you know, on the job. In fact, you couldn't even do it without being sponsored by a company. So it's not even something you could do on your own. I wouldn't get too hung up on getting any kind of letters after your name, except for you want to be a doctor or if you're going to be a CPA. Because I think those are the ones that, in my opinion, are the ones that where really you have to have the prerequisite of those letters first. So that's all I'll say.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Carlos?
My point was similar to Ben's. I think going back to recruiting, and this is like junior, senior year of college for me, everything you do in the world of finance, you can learn on the job. But though, in retrospect, the students or the individuals that did get those jobs, especially like the more high profile ones, were the ones who had that network. And if you don't come with it, like a lot of us don't, you have to build that. And that's something that I didn't know going into college, which is a totally different mindset from some other folks who did. So I would just double down on the networking.
Thank you, Carlos. Daniela?
I don't think there's much else I can add to what people have already said. Yeah, like networking, obviously, any certification that's designated to your industry is important. But I would also say, so I am not a certified public accountant. I'm not a CPA. That was the route that I intended to go when I was at a Big Four firm. But through the experience and just obviously being exposed to different roles, I learned that the specific area and specific tax set of rules that I wanted to focus on, there's obviously a benefit to having licenses and letters after your name, but I can still very much practice and, you know, add value to the firm's overall structuring plan. So give it your all, try, obviously, because the more certifications you have, the better off you will be. And there will be less red tape to navigate as you grow in your career. But don't get hung up on like you're not as smart or as capable as anyone else who does have their CPA license, because I've also met people who have a CPA and I really scratch my head as to how they're CPAs. So don't let that deter you from any of your next career moves. But yeah, I think just network. Don't be afraid to try something new, and don't give up on yourself more than anything. Just because you don't have the small component of what everyone else in your class has doesn't mean that that's the end all be all for you. There's still a lot more than you can offer, but really try and give everything that you do your best effort.
Thank you, Daniela.
Sorry, David. The only thing I wanted to add to that, what you guys said I think is great, but if you do want to get your certification, I think the earlier, for CPA, the earlier you do it, the better. Like, you don't want to be in busy season still studying for the exams. Like, if you stay for the 5th year, really use that time to take the exams. Like, you're in study mode on campus or whatever, you're in study mode as you're in college, and it'll get harder and harder as you get into your job. So that would be my only addition to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. And in the interest of time, I know we've had some great questions come in through the chat here, and I do want to open up the floor to one of our students here. If it's okay, Ruben, I'm going to open up the floor here, and you could go ahead and ask your question. So thank you. Yep. Oh, you should be able to go off mute. So Ruben, if you look at the bottom left hand side on the screen, you should be able to unmute. Here, sorry everybody. No worries, Ruben. So let me see here if I could just go into the chat, and I'll read your question aloud, Ruben. So, and really thank you for bringing this up. So just to summarize what Ruben said, everyone, so the other attendees can see. Ruben stated, David, your point about when we are in the time and place in life and career sparked my interest. Meeting people where you are at, while at the same time where you want to go, is a dilemma. Where you are at where you are at value where you should be at aren't always aligned. Regardless, Ben made a good point about licensing credentials, and you all did about this professional student pipeline to tap into. In your industries and the professional responsibility implications on DEI, internal hiring development opportunities in the corporation country versus status quo conventional wisdom on the old guard time attracts some of us to our current roles. Natalia made a great point about this. However, I want to hear about Anthony's point in how our industries are so different. What is your opinion on global HR trends and international strategy from your unique transitional domestic Latino perspective? Do you feel like you have practiced well? What's the biggest difference? What's the biggest performance impediment you see now that it's quote unquote game day?
Well, I think that only question was for me. Well, first off, for me, it's a lot to unpack, but just I'll start, from where it comes to the idea of the industries being different. And mind you, this is from my perspective of only knowing my industry and the people around me. Like me, when I'm with Dave and we speak, it's rare that we get into depth about our industries. We talk more about, the topical things and what we're going through. But I would just say that in my mind, and when I'm thinking of design, I see it as one route with an unlimited number of options, right? I see it as there's different ways to attack the same problem, and there's no one that really can stop you besides yourself. Whereas, again, speaking from a really uninformed standpoint, when it comes to things that have a process, there's a certain number of processes to get to the end result. And after those number of processes, to my understanding, it really is just, well, then we have to kind of take a step back and kind of reevaluate things. And I guess when it comes to design, I see it more as a path with a lot of kinks in it, as opposed to, stepping stones where it takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And again, everyone can correct me if I'm wrong. I might be completely wrong about this, and if there might be unlimited ways to do things in your roles as well. And secondly, when it comes to the global HR trends and international strategy. So thankfully for the company I work with now, that's been my main international, I guess, experience with trends. I came from a background working primarily in entertainment and working, with the Netflix and HBOs, all the way to, the Sundance and kind of more, not obscure channels, but not the most highly sought after ones in terms of the jobs. So what I do now, I do a lot of sports design, and we're working on things from, well, primarily with our one client from CONCACAF. And there's a couple of projects that we do that now are on a more international basis. So that's my first experience with it. And from this perspective, in terms of the trend, it's completely different. It's, you know, what we see around us here, driving around and specifically staying inside and taking in media from, you know, a safe point of view. It's night and day. You know, I think as designers, we look at different countries and different trends and try to figure out how we're going to get there, you know, when it comes to the national side, when it comes to the US side, when it comes to marketing things, you know, people, the European and specifically what I've been noticing more in Mexico City has been a strong push for this organic look and for this idea of homegrown and rooted. And, you know, we have that here, but in a more, I guess, like patriotic way, if that makes sense. It's exploited rather than, you know, like dived into. And I feel like that's something that is going to shift a lot here. A lot of the marketing on the US side is going to not look to the culture as a way to bring in audience and almost exploit it. They're going to look at and value kind of what it brings to the table and where that can drive, in this case, advertising on my end.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. And in the interest of time here, we have one more question, and Aiko, thank you. So the question is, I'm currently a freshman studying accounting and would love to know if you have any advice you wish you knew as a freshman in college.
I can start this, but similar to I think what we said earlier and how we took our path to get where we are, I wish I would have known that there's a lot more out there, that like if you're an accounting student, that there's more than to go into audit. Like there's a bunch of other things. So my advice for my freshman self would be to just explore, really get involved in different activities, different events that you can go learn, like to hear other speakers, maybe take a class that you wouldn't normally have taken, that it's not required, but something that may spark your interest. And so I would just try everything you can until you figure out something that you like, would be my advice.
Yeah, like along with what Erica said, just as a freshman, you really have the door wide open to actually try to get as many internships as you can. I was in New York, so it was very easy for me to find internships in like banks and different things because everything was like 20 minutes away from my school. But if you can find internships that you can do over your winter break, over your summer break, over the spring, when I think in New York, a lot of the big four companies hired people from our school to come work for February, March, and April and help out during their busy season. If you can do all those things and like actually figure out that you like it, because I'm telling you, it's miserable. Like if you go into a job that you don't actually like, you're gonna feel very, very upset. And I'm very glad that I took all my internships and I tried everything that I thought I wanted to do because I think my life would have been so different. So just try as many things as you can, like in going to all these events and apply for all those jobs, even if they're not the job you're aiming for. Just try it all so you can know for a fact whether you like it or not.
Thanks, Natalia. And so I know we have a couple of minutes here, and just for some closing remarks, students, we've had some great panelists share their insight about their careers, their roles, what's motivated them, how they were able to explore their careers to find what they're really passionate about. Now, I know we only had an hour today, and that's a very limited amount of time to really be able to ask the questions that you want. So I believe all of us here are on LinkedIn. Feel free to send any of the panelists a message to learn some more about their careers, ask questions. Daniela's advice to be curious about what they do on a daily basis, right? This is not where the engagement with the panelists has to end. So feel free to reach out and schedule some time to learn more. So panelists, thank you so much for the time today. Oh,
So there's just like one more question that came in from Nicole. She was asking, what are the more intermediate and advanced Excel skills that you'd recommend students to focus on learning? I don't know if any of you want to chime in. I know from my end, like if you know how to program macros in Excel, you are seen as a bomb person in your team, and you're going to be very, very key. So, and this is like super easy. Well, not super easy to learn, but you can learn it all on YouTube. It takes time and practice, but you can learn it. And I'll hand it off to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalia. Students, are there any more questions that we may have missed that you would like to ask before we conclude the panel?
Definitely learn all the Excel shortcuts. What Carlos just mentioned in the chat. It's so helpful. And it takes time, but with practice, like you just learn it.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for the time, everyone. Students, please feel free to reach out to any of the panelists here if you want to continue to learn more. But hopefully everybody has a great rest of the evening, and stay safe and healthy, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.